When the phrase lateral thinking is used, which it often is, we usually think of Edward de Bono, the guru of creative thinking. De Bono has written many best-selling books about his philosophy on thinking. He has more than 1,000 instructors and trainers around the world teaching his thinking systems. There are websites and a De Bono Foundation based in Ireland. He was in Australia recently to promote his latest book, Think Before It's Too Late, a summary of all his most revolutionary ideas on thinking. We spoke to Edward de Bono during the tour.
To be here.
Now, your first sentence in the introduction to Think Before It's Too Late is typically de Bono. It says, this is not a nice book. You want to warn readers that they have, been far too complacent about the quality of human thinking and that we have to do something before it's too late. I know it's only been out recently, but what's been the reaction so far?
Well, the original title of the book was going to be It's Too Late and I Don't Care. 23 reasons why world thinking is so poor. Publishers were a bit alarmed at that title, so they changed it to the present title, Think Before It's Too Late. So really what I'm saying is that the biggest problem facing the world, humanity, is not global warming, climate change, but the inadequate quality of our thinking. And the fact that no one thinks about that, no one considers it, makes it an even bigger problem.
But this has been something you've been on about for a long time, really, hasn't it? Sort of variations on the same thing.
This is more specific. You see, about 3 weeks ago, I invented the new word, Edna, E-B-N-E. Edna means excellent, but not enough. The rear left wheel of a motor car is excellent, but not enough. A chef who cooks the most beautiful omelette is Edna. Our existing thinking is excellent, but not enough.
Why is it not enough? Is that because we are not solving the great global problems?
Because what happened is when Greek thinking came to Europe, time of the Renaissance, schools, universities thinking were in the hands of the church. They didn't need creative thinking or design thinking or perceptual thinking. What they needed was truth, logic and argument to prove heretics wrong. So that's been the core of our thinking. Thinking to find the truth, which is excellent in science, but is not enough. We need creative thinking, design thinking. For instance, in conflicts, we rush to judge the parties. You're wrong, I'm going to wallop you, and so on. Not how do we design a way forward. For example, in Gaza and Israel, what I would do is those countries which set up Israel should jointly give the Palestinians a grant of $3 billion a year. But every time they fire a rocket at Israel, they lose 50 million. Now, that changes the whole scene.
So it's a financial kind of
designing the way forward, design.
One of the, we'll get to design in a minute, but we couldn't resist this local angle in your introduction. The former coach of the Australian cricket team, John Buchanan, asked for your help, and you gave the guys a short seminar. Now, they went on to, have a record win over England in the Ashes. They need you now more than ever. Are you available?
Of course, of course.
And also, the Nobel scientist, Dr. Peter Doherty, also said that he read your first book and it did change his thinking.
That's right.
What do you think about your ideas would have specifically helped a Nobel Prize-winning doctor?
Well, it's difficult to say. I'll give you another example. I was in India giving a lecture in the evening. This fellow stood up. He said, as a student, I was traveling to Europe. My plane was diverted to Paris. I had some time at the airport. I went to the bookshop and bought a copy of my first book, surprisingly, in English in Paris. And he said, I kept it in my briefcase for 30 years. He said, at that time, I had $3 in my pocket. Today, I have $3 billion in my pocket, and that's 80% due to your book. Now, what I think in some of these cases is reading my book reassures people that their own thinking is fine. It tells them, yes, what you're doing is fine. As they've been told probably at school that's wrong and you shouldn't do that. So it may just be reassurance what they get from my book.
Okay, but creativity is one of the key themes that you talk about in thinking, that we need it, and yet you say that we don't have enough of it at the moment. No. How do we become more creative in our thinking? What do you actually mean by that?
I did write a letter to Gordon Brown saying they should have a minister for thinking. And a minister for thinking will help other ministries develop new ideas, new possibilities. Maybe Mr. Rudd here would do with the Minister of Thinking as well.
What sort of response did you get from Gordon Brown?
He just sent a letter saying he's thinking about it.
He's thinking about the Minister for Thinking. But how do we change our thinking to be more creative and also to help solve some of these problems?
It's happening in schools. Worldwide, there are different countries using my work. Some countries in every school, like Venezuela. Chinese government is trying it out in 5 provinces, and if they like the results, may put it into 680,000 schools.
But what is it that they're trying?
My teaching thinking in schools. And its research in England shows that teaching my thinking as a separate subject improves performance in every other subject by between 30 and 100%. Huge changes. And unemployed youngsters taught my thinking for 5 hours, and employment rate increased 500%. Very violent youngsters taught my thinking. The rate of criminal conviction dropped to 1/10.
I suppose I'm trying to get
things.
to, what is at the heart of what you're teaching?
Well, what I'm teaching is perceptual thinking and creative thinking. As soon as you say creativity, people think of artistic creativity. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about idea and thinking creativity, and you absolutely can teach them, absolutely. The techniques and so on, no question about it. And then again, we have another problem with the word design. We think design is making a nice coffee cup or a nice sofa. Design is putting together what we have to deliver the values we want. Absolutely as important as analysis, totally absent from education.
Can you give me an example of that, how we design
Well, the
thinking?
example I gave with Gaza and Israel is design. Or very simply, we have Mugabe in Zimbabwe. We say to Mugabe, you are father of the nation, which he is, title for life, we'll give you a nice little palace and a chauffeur, the right to veto 2 bills in Parliament, just move out of politics. He'd move out tomorrow.
So why is that not being done now? I mean, that sounds common sense.
Everything is common sense once you've thought of it, yes. And I'll give you another example of common sense. Once I was talking to the Californian ecology group, 500 people, and they said, we have a problem with factories on the river. They put out pollution, people downstream suffer. Using a provocation, the word Po means provocation. Po, the factory should be downstream of itself. Sounds absurd. From it comes a very simple idea. We legislate. If you build a factory on the river, your input is downstream of your own outputs. You're the first to get your pollution. That is now legislation in 13 countries. Very obvious in hindsight, very obvious.
This idea of provocation, you talk about PO or PO, or a provocative operation. Now, what does that mean? That you actually, think of something totally illogical to unsettle your brain to then try and be creative?
No, I'll give you another example. There was a head of Prudential Insurance in Canada, Ron Barbara, and looking at life insurance, and he said, Po, you die before you die. Now, that sounds impossible. From it came the idea of living needs benefits, that if you get a serious illness, they pay you 75% of the death benefits immediately. Very, very successful. On that basis, he was made chief executive of Prudential United States, and now virtually every insurance company in North America does it. Why? Because now you have funds for pay for hospital treatment and everything. And from an insurance company, it's no risk, because they've been paying insurance premiums for 20 years, and 6 months between illness and dying is not a big deal. And obvious in hindsight, again, obvious. Any valuable creative idea will always be obvious and logical in hindsight.
One of the controversial comments that you say is really about computers and thinking, and you say that computers have made matters worse because children just go to them and try and get the answer. They don't think about it. Are computers the enemy of creative thinking?
No, it would be unfair to say that, no. Because computers are so very good at information, children start to believe you don't have to think about things, you just have to search for the right answer. Now, that's not the fault of computers. The fact they're so excellent it opens up that route.
So how do we sort of manage it so that children still think, or people still think?
We must teach thinking in schools formally, deliberately, definitely as a subject. Yes.
One of the another controversial comment you make is that in a digital age, universities are out of date. Now, does that spell the end of universities, or how do they catch up?
I was saying this at World University President's Summit in Bangkok, I think 2, maybe 3 years ago. 1,500, maybe 2,500 university presidents. Originally, universities were to bring the wisdom of ages, make it available today. In a digital age, you can get all the information you want. Universities should be teaching skills. Information skills, yes, how to get information. Thinking skills, people skills, management skills. Universities should be teaching skills, not just information.
One of the things you say a word about the media is
Yes.
that, the media no longer plays a central role in our culture and that we need to develop positive products. What do you mean by that?
Well, no, I think the media, as you know, the downturn, various newspapers are hurting badly because advertising is being cut and advertising is being diverted to the internet and so on and so on. So I think the media really, at least the print media, tend to be negative. If you open a newspaper, most of the stories are about some murder, some suicide, some disaster. I would like to see newspapers having at least one page positive news. Now, if they say, but where do we get it? Okay, set up an agency like Reuters, a positive news agency, which collects all the good stories. The newspaper taps them, like they tap Reuters, and say, okay, we want some positive stories.
All right, and what's the benefit of that? Just that power of reinforcing positivity?
Yes, that people start thinking positive things are possible, there's stories of people who've succeeded, all that sort of thing. But really a continual diet of negativity. It may be interesting, and I'm not saying it isn't interesting. I mean, if you have a story about a fellow who's shot his wife and grandfather or something, people will read it, but it doesn't do much for them.
Dr. de Bono, it's a most interesting read. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.